when you were interviewed on HuffPost Live after your post was getting a lot of attention, and during that interview, one of the other guests in the segment was a woman named Shirley Hussar, who was identified as a Republican strategist. And what she said was that you, as a non-religious cadet, that you didn't belong there in the first place because West Point was, and this is her words, a religious institute. So her attitude was that you should have checked out West Point better before going there, found out it was a religious institute, which she thinks it is and should be, and should have decided not to go there because you're not religious.
Sorry,
and you didn't really get a chance to respond to that too much in the HuffPost Live segment, which is why I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that here.
Well, I chose not to really go after that. I mean, I registered it when she said it to me, but I didn't want to be, I didn't really want to tear her apart, and I thought that might be impolite or rude. And
now, does it really matter what Shirley Hussar, a Republican strategist, thinks? Yeah, not particularly, but there's an awful lot of people in this country who believe the same thing as her, and worse than that, there are a lot of officers in the military who do believe that our military institutions are supposed to be religious, and of course that does matter.
Right. I didn't take Shirley Hussar particularly seriously, and I don't think anyone really should. That said, the problem with what she said is it's very reflective of the way that many Americans view our country. A lot of people think that this is a Christian nation. A lot of people will say, well, it says in God we trust on our money, that means we're all religious. Well, I mean, they also probably don't understand that in God we trust was added to our money as a response to communism in an attempt to nationalize our country, and long story. But the real danger isn't what people think or what people say or, people being rude. That doesn't bother me nearly so much as what people do in our government. So you'll see in the military there are many people who do incentivize religious participation. There are some officers like the former General Jerry Boykin, who claimed that we're on a religious war against Islam and we should wipe out their religion, and that's why we're fighting our battles.
Right.
That's a very dangerous man. Because he polarizes the enemies of us, the enemies of our country, and demonstrates to them that we are a Christian nation fighting a holy war, which we're not. We're absolutely not. And then, I mean, even bringing it down to a smaller scale than that, we have within our own borders many government officials who think that it's okay for us to vote into legislation things that are based in nothing but religion.
Right.
I mean, we don't have stem cell research. We ban marriage against an entire segment of our population for no reason other than tradition and the idea that it goes against the good tingly feelings of the religious majority. I mean, those are really dangerous things. Teaching creationism in school, we're going to have a scientifically illiterate population if that does return.
It's not if it does, because as I say, in Louisiana, there's actually a school that's under their voucher program that's teaching that, you can't make this up, that the Loch Ness Monster is real. This is in their science class, that the Loch Ness Monster is real. And the fact that the Loch Ness Monster is real is proof that evolution is wrong. It's proof of creationism somehow. This is being taught with, taxpayer money. We're getting off subject from the military here, but, you really can't separate this stuff because, and I'm going to pull this up on my own computer here, I actually myself wrote a post about what Shirley Hussar said in the HuffPost Live segment with Blake, and how she called West Point the religious institute, and she responded to that, and she's posted the same comments in several places. I'm just going to pull up one of them here, what she said, because she brings it into it, what I call the Christian nationalist history revisionism, that all I can do is read her comment because it's indescribable. She says that she starts off with the thing that you should not have gone to West Point because you're not religious, you didn't belong there, with her assumption she has West Point is a religious institution. And she says, Page clearly did not do his homework before entering in West Point. West Point was established by President of the United States Thomas Jefferson, who was a man of faith. Jefferson was a very private man. In regards to Jefferson's religious beliefs, and she goes into quoting his grandson, something about his religious beliefs, and then she misquotes Jefferson in the same way the religious right, the books of like David Barton and the history revisionists do. She misquotes Thomas Jefferson, and she goes on to say that West Point's religious ways are not an injection into our service academies, but it is the, and in all caps, bloodline that was established by Thomas Jefferson, one of the founding fathers, in 1802. And she goes into this whole thing of somehow Thomas Jefferson made West Point a religious institute, so that's historically correct. And I just gotta say, there was no chaplain at West Point until 1814. Little fact that Shirley Hussar apparently is not aware of when she was copying and pasting most of her history from Wikipedia. But in no way was West Point, obviously, was not founded as a religious institute. But there are many people who believe that, and it's part of the problem of people not, of criticizing you. Now, you've gotten quite a few personal attacks in the comments besides Hussar's. You've gotten, if you want to talk about some of those.
Well, some of the more entertaining ones came from cadets. There was a couple of cadets wrote, essays on how I'm a terrible person. Okay. I had a group of cadets make a statement that they should drag me into Central Area and burn me alive so that I knew what an Inquisition was like. Of course they didn't do it, and I'm very thankful that, that they didn't do that, because
get some matches right now.
Sounds like a very bad day. In response to my problem with prayer at mandatory events, this is what they came up with. Many events at USMA, the United States Military Academy, begin with a prayer. The prayers are intentionally not compulsory or exclusionary and are a long-standing tradition during which attendees are invited to join in the prayer. So the response here is prayer at mandatory events is traditional, therefore it's okay. And then the prayers are not compulsory or exclusionary, so they're okay. And to that, I have to call bullshit.
Because it's a mandatory event, you're standing there. How is it not compulsory if you have to be there and hear it? It's compulsory.
Well, the argument that you'll hear from people who are advocates of mandatory prayer, they will say that, well, it's not exclusionary because it's not a prayer to Jesus, and it's not a prayer to Allah, and it's not a prayer to, Vishnu. However, it is a prayer to Almighty God, Master of the Universe.
Right.
It is also a prayer. So just doing the act itself requires certain assumptions of theological belief. You have to assume that there is a paternal a God who is all-powerful, who controls our lives and our destinies. So these are theological ideas that the command is clearly respecting and sponsoring and advocating for. And even if it's not just secular people, I mean, how does a Muslim person pray? Are they going to, pull out a compass and find the direction to face Mecca? No, that doesn't happen. If someone, wants to sit down and hum a mantra, that's not going to happen either. There's only one method of prayer that happens at these events, and it's certainly exclusionary to many, many more people than just to humanists or the non-religious group. But again, it's traditional, and that's not an argument based in reason or sound logic.
Well, a lot of these traditions, like I was just saying with, responding to Shirley Hussar's thing of Thomas Jefferson made this a religious institute when it was founded in 1802 when he was president. But if you look back, the tradition that West Point didn't have a chaplain. Okay, so the tradition, if you go back to the beginning and say the beginning is the tradition, no, there was no chaplain. There was whatever. And a lot of these traditions, the one that comes up, actually I believe there was legislation about it in Congress, was that flag folding thing at military funerals. And people will say, well, it's tradition, it's military tradition. But when you look back, you find out that the tradition only dates back to 1988.
Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of these things where they say it's tradition really isn't as traditional as they make it out to be.
I actually have another message from an officer, which points to this exactly. And I like to refer to other people who are currently in the military because so many have made the claim that I'm inventing this. But here's what he says. I'm in the lucky position to be stationed on TDY close to my father, who is a retired Lieutenant Colonel, United States Marine Corps, and a 1970 grad of Navy. During my time here, he was able to witness my promotion, and we were able to watch the recent Army-Navy game together. At my promotion, they sprung both a benediction and invocation on me, without really clearing it through me beforehand. My father, who is not an atheist, remarked that he had never seen either of these done at a promotion, and didn't see why it was necessary. Later, we both watched the Army-Navy game, and were confused as to when they started having someone, let alone the United States Military Academy, Catholic chaplain, give prayers on the 50-yard line on national TV before the game. I certainly couldn't remember ever seeing one when I was a cadet, nor could he remember one from over the 40 years of viewing Army-Navy games. Just a thought on that, and as the excuse for all the prayers and Christian pageantry is always tradition. Best of luck.
Right. That's exactly what we're saying. It's people. You talk to people who were in the military, you know, in the 70s, even the 80s, and they say they never saw this. This did not happen when they were in. There was, you know, just exactly what that officer said. And yet now anyone who's trying to do this and saying it's okay, the reason is always it's tradition. So like you said, we got to call bullshit on that.